Samantha Stone. Welcome to Today in Woburn. We have a jam-packed show as always today. We have our Mayor Scott Galvin with us, and we have a lot of things to talk about with him. We also have our chair of our school committee, Ellen Crowley. Thank you so much for joining us. We've got lots of conversations we'll be talking about. And then we have some special guests from the Boy Scouts who are going to tell us about a special way to help do some fundraising and support the organization and have some holiday cheer. So we'll be inviting them in just a couple of minutes. I'm going to kick off with you, Scott. Welcome.
Welcome.
So Scott, before we dive into update around some of the COVID and numbers, which we will do, and I know everybody is always eager to hear, I did want to just chat with you and thank you. So over the weekend, we had some interest in the community in extending our holiday festivities on the grounds, and we've had a nativity scene that has been donated and set up by some folks outside of an outside organization to celebrate the holidays. And we had some folks who were interested in putting a menorah in the center as well to celebrate that as well. And you've been like super supportive. So first of all, thank you.
Yep.
And I also want to thank our community in general, because I put a call out there to do some fundraising, and in 3 hours we had enough money to fund the menorah on City Hall. So I just wanted to thank you before we did anything else for supporting the effort and helping, support the diversity in our community.
Yeah, it's going to be great, and I'm looking forward to, expanding the common, like you said, for the diversity. It's about time, right, that this happens, and I really appreciate your leadership in getting people together to rally behind it, and looking forward to when it gets up and celebrating the 8 days. It starts December 10th, right? And it'll be really something special, something new. And it's always good when we do things that we haven't done before. So I'm happy that you took this initiative, and it's going to be a good tradition for the community going forward. So thank you.
Yeah, and I just want to let people know I'm not Jewish. I'm also not Christian in the traditional sense. I sort of agnostic, and but I was really touched by some of the stories that I heard of a family who was feeling a little left out. And I have to just say that support and fundraising did not come specifically from any one community. People of all different backgrounds who celebrate all different kinds of, holidays and things joined in. And Joe Brown jumped in right away to help us out with some of the logistics, because he's been on the festival committee in the past. So I just, way to go, Woburn. In general, we once again continue to celebrate our neighbors and make everybody feel welcome. So I thank them, and I thank you, Scott, because you were super responsive, having conversations over the weekend about it. And I recognize that that's outside of the regular time frame. Yep. And this wasn't a super urgent issue, but it was an important one, and we appreciate it. So
glad to be a part of it. Yep.
Yeah. Thank you. So now that we've gotten some of the fun stuff out of the way, I want to talk a little bit about some things that are not so fun. Right. We did testing on Saturday again. If I understood and read the reports correctly, we had more positive numbers than we expected, perhaps, and has sort of bumped us into the red category. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Just a correction though, it wasn't the testing that bumped us into the red. We would have gone over the positivity rate without the additional testing. So we're committed to doing testing. It's a great service for the community, great service for our residents. It's free testing. First week we had 500. This past weekend we had 650. There were more positive cases than we expected out of it. The first round we did like 500. There were 34 positives, which was a little higher, but again, you're doing it for a number of reasons. One is to try to drive the positivity rate down, and two is to catch those asymptomatics who might be out spreading, unknowingly spreading the COVID to people who they come in contact. So it's a good thing. We're happy about it. We've been trending up not only with numbers but also the positivity. And when we looked at the numbers and subtracted out, we would have been slightly over the 5% regardless. So. We also, with Ellen's help, we're working on testing the teachers and also city employees, and happy to report on that front that the first 3 times we've done it, there have been no positives for teachers or employees. So that's a good thing. That's one good.
That's a really good thing. And I'm glad you clarified, because you're starting to read my mind, Scott. And I was going to ask you if the testing, significantly contributed, because I think that's a question on people's minds. So thank you for.
No, it doesn't. In fact, it doesn't. And we're, you know, we're hoping that as we look at the numbers now, we're hoping maybe we can get under that, you know, 5% threshold. But again, you know, and Ellen and I and the superintendent have gone over this exhaustively, that you know, our commitment is to keep the kids in school, keep the teachers, as long as we can do it in a safe manner. That's what we're committed to doing. And you know, we worked on that and came up with a nice letter to the parents to let them know we're committed to keeping the kids in school, provided we can keep that safe environment. We feel we can.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. And I don't like to make assumptions, so I'm going to explicitly ask. From what I understood, we are not finding spread in terms of a particular event. It wasn't like a big event that, you know, seemed to create a lot of cases. We're not seeing spikes in any particular school or particular sporting activity or anything. This is just sort of general spread that we're catching and hopefully stopping from pursuing. Is that correct?
That's correct. But one of the things that we are starting to see is that it is in the younger age categories, you know, and that's when some of the students / you know, older young adults are getting together, and you're starting to see if one gets them 2, 3, 4 popping up in different families. So we are starting to see it spread more quickly in those small environments where people think they're okay because these are their friends, they've been with them. But the case is, it is spreading more rapidly among small groups. And when one gets it, everybody seems to be getting it.
Okay. I think that's a really good lesson and reminder for us, particularly as we're going into Thanksgiving. It's coming up very quickly for us, and we want to make sure people are safe. And I know we are seeing quite a demand for testing increase with the greater availability in the city. So thank you for doing that. Yeah. I do want to talk a little bit about holiday cheer. So I'm going to sort of have you come back in a moment to join Ellen and chat some more. But before we do that, we have some special guests representing the Boy Scouts, Amy, Brian, and Mary. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
We'll have Mary and Brian not turn off their mute at the same time. It's totally fine. You guys have to do like sign language to each other to figure it out. That's so great. Brian, I'm going to actually pick on you since you're the Boy Scout in the crowd, and I'd love to hear from you. Tell us a little bit about the fundraiser that you are doing right now and how we can get involved.
So basically, we're selling wreaths, kissing balls, and baskets, and they're decorated and some are non-decorated. And ways you can participate, I mean, just like if you can buy one or tell your friends about them, it would really help our troop. And yeah.
Right. So can you guarantee if I buy a kissing ball, my college son will have to give me a hug when he gets home? I would really like to force him to do that because I might not otherwise. I know you can't guarantee that. But tell us a little bit about where we can purchase those. Are you set up in certain locations, or should they go online? What's the best way for people to support this fundraiser?
If I can jump in, sorry,
please,
Brian.
Amy, go ahead.
I've shared a flyer with Jen that she said she'll be able to share on here. Our troop does have a Facebook page, so it's Troop 519 in Woburn if you want to search for it. We've got information up on our Facebook page. We're doing all of our orders in advance. Turns out that the boys actually decorate the wreaths, and we're going to have a massive build fest on December 5th. And we want to have the right numbers of wreaths and baskets and everything for the boys to decorate. So we're asking for pre-orders by November 30th, which is not very far from now, but the contact information should be on the flyer that Jen will hopefully be able to share with you guys. And not going to be standing around at the festival on the Common, because we're not.
No, we're sad, but we're glad you're still able to find a way to still support the effort.
Our church, which is the chartered organization that supports us, has been wonderful about allowing us to meet outside. We're not using the church insides, but we're using their property, and we are having our decorating time there. We're going to have our wreath pickup right outside the church as well. So all that information is on the flyer.
Perfect. Well, we really appreciate that. Very excited. What are some of the ways that the funds are used to support the Boy Scouts?
So this year, obviously, things have been very different. We have still managed to go on 2 camping trips before we turned into a red town, and also our council, which is located, the headquarters in Woburn, decided that no overnight camping, and that's perfectly fine. We did get 2 camping trips in, and some of the funds went towards reducing the costs for each of our scouts to attend. We've also had some really kind of high adventure stuff. We've done whitewater rafting with our boys, and they never have to pay the full price for those adventures because that is something that's sort of out of people's financial bracket. When we do have a normal year, our scout camp is for a week. We go off into the New Hampshire woods, and we definitely also reduce the cost for some scouts. We pay entirely for some scouts to attend with our fundraising. We don't just do camping, but that's kind of the big fun, is really getting out there. We've also done biking trips and kayaking, and we had a Klondike Derby. We went camping this January or February, slept outside in the tents, in the snow.
When you said Klondike, I'm thinking ice cream. I don't know. I'm not so sure about the outside camping part, but you're
we
brave.
did not need ice cream on that trip. It was warmer than our Thanksgiving trip was last year, when it was 20 degrees one morning. So
Did you, Brian, did you get to ice fish on that trip?
I don't believe so.
What did you do for outdoor activities when you were there trying to keep warm?
So basically the Klondike Derby we carried like a little sledge thing that like we had like there were sleeping bags on it. It was basically like carrying all of our, well, not all of our gear, but it was carrying gear.
Yeah.
And me and a few other scouts and I, we were carrying the sledge, and we did a bunch of various like tasks. Like one of them was tying knots. One of them was, there was this log that we had to like make a frame out of and then like carry someone on, I think. And then there was, at the end, there was a big race with all the sledges, and there were also just a bunch of other activities that didn't involve the sledge, but that was like the real big kicker, like the big.
Well, I'm thrilled that we as a community can help support those efforts in getting outside. Living in a city, we don't always naturally have opportunities to do those things, and it's really wonderful that we have a chance to support young men like Brian and others who like to do this. And if you're starting a campfire or fire pit out in these winter days, you want those Boy Scout neighbors around to show you the right way to do it. So thank you all for joining us. Jen will make sure to distribute the information, and we hope you get lots of orders to support the effort and support all the hard work and outdoor adventures. We think it's great. Thank you so much.
thank you, Samantha.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. If there's anything else that folks have questions on, we'll make sure to direct them towards the information that you've posted in the Facebook page, and let's get those holiday cheer all around town. I hope to see lots of wreaths and kissing balls and all kinds of things. And now that I know the Boy Scouts actually help decorate it, I'm even more excited to check them out. That's awesome. Thank you so much. So Ellen, welcome to the show.
Hello, Samantha.
We are very glad to have you here.
Thank you. And I just want to say one thing. I've had the opportunity to speak to a Cub Scout group before, and I was so impressed with the way in which the program helps children with diverse learning issues. And I really feel like it's a very inclusive program, and I was very impressed by that. So I just wanted to compliment the Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts situation in Woburn.
Well,
I enjoyed listening to that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. We're really lucky to have a lot of things that we are able to provide our young people in the community. And I love the Scouts because it's such a great way to share interests with other people and get outside and do lots of things and learn lots of really useful skills in life, right? All kinds of things. So
Yes, tremendous. Okay, but back to me.
Now back to you and back to school. Thank you for joining us. I do want to talk about the situation we're in terms of we've seen a steady rise, and as Scott pointed out, we are fortunate that now we're not seeing lots of spread in school systems. But I'd like to just remind folks a little bit, as guidance changes by the state as we learn more about this virus, as we watch changes within our community and how we respond, as we track activity in the hospitals, all these things coming together. What are the factors that the schools are taking into account as we are making the hard decisions that we have to do on a regular basis?
So last week on the 18th, we became the red city. And I spoke to the mayor a couple times, and he speaks to the superintendent every day. And I spoke to the superintendent, and Dr. Crowley made the decision that we're going to stay the course. We're going to keep in-person instruction. And we're going to do it as long as we can with an eye on the data, and keep looking at it to make sure that the community remains safe. Transmission, for the most part, is not happening in school buildings. Children are in classrooms, they're 6 feet apart, they're wearing their masks. And we're not seeing kids coming in to classrooms and shedding the virus to their peers. A big factor is that staff are not testing positive. So you have teachers in classrooms 4 days a week with 2 different cohorts, and they're not contacting this virus. They're not testing positive, and so we feel very optimistic that we are running a very safe school district at this point. And a very pleasant surprise, Samantha, is that children are complying with the safety protocols. They're not taking their masks and flipping them across the room and not removing masks from each other. They're taking this seriously, and they're learning these valuable skills as to how to keep their community safe. So we are just thrilled that we're in the 9th week of in-person instruction, and we're very proud of it.
I think that's, I'm sorry.
One more thing, because it has to be stated, is that children, very large portions of our school population really need in-person instruction. They need that eye contact with teachers. They need to be in school buildings, and the education loss and the loss of a safety net for those kiddos would be devastating, especially in December. So like Dr. Crowley says, at the end of the day, it's all about the children. We're here to educate kids and keep kids safe. So, and the school committee is completely trusting of the mayor and the superintendent to make the right decisions.
I'm really glad that you brought up compliance with masks and things at school. I mean, I think that everyone in with, understandable trepidation. We weren't quite sure how we were going to get people to sort of we're going to have asking some very young children and some older, angsty children, right? And young adults to do this thing that is uncomfortable and to do it for many hours at a day and to really change the routines and change how they interact. And I think it's really great to hear that compliance is, it's not creating discipline issues. It doesn't seem to be creating, problems that for the most part everybody is, and I have to give credit to the thoughtfulness around, the hours that school instruction is happening, the way meals are being handled. I mean, I think those things are not unimportant in how well our students are able to adapt to this.
Yeah, it's not pretty. It's not always easy. Kids used to get out at 2:30 in the elementary school level. Now they're out at 1. That was a really difficult decision to make. But the idea of kids taking their masks off and eating, and how they behave sometimes in cafeterias was the drive around that.
What do you mean they're not sitting there with their manners and keeping everything to themselves and neatly cutting with their forks? Yeah, it's not like that in the school cafeteria.
No.
No. Why should it be? It's not like that at my dining room table. So I'd be disappointed if the school was much better. Scott, I want to ask you a question. So one of the things that we know is that towns across Massachusetts, but particularly around us, have had varying degrees of in-person and remote types of learning. Our vocational schools are just now, I think next week, maybe going into in-person learning. They have not had any in-person learning so far this year. Kind of just share with us a little bit about your philosophy about the schools and how we should be looking at supporting them and the role in-person instruction plays for our community.
Very similar to what Ellen said. It's so important for the kids to have in-person learning, to be able to interact with their peers, and we'd love it to be full-time, but there are restrictions with the distancing in each classroom, and it's worked out well. And we do continue, like one of the things, like I know we're really happy that we've made it to the Thanksgiving week, because there were, people didn't think we were going to make it past 2 weeks. That was the thing. And, a lot of it has to do really with how well the schools were prepared for this, right from, Dave Dunkley and the custodians creating, great mitigation within each classroom. It goes without question, and I don't know, Ellen and I will say this, the teachers have been extremely cooperative and have allowed us to do this. Parents have bent over to make this work, and the kids have been great. So it's been a real team effort, and we still have, we've jumped into the red, and we're concerned about that. So we're watching how it spreads in the community and how that will make its way into, the classrooms. And like Ellen said, right now we're seeing better results in the classrooms than we're seeing in the community. So we'll keep going, and we're watching that, working with Matt and Ellen and the staff. We're very nimble and, able to react to certain situations. If we have, multiple cases in a school, we'd take action with that school or maybe a classroom. So it's been a great process, and everything along with it. I'm very proud of how everybody's come together to make this work for the community. So it's great to keep the kids in, and we'll do it as long as we safely can.
I think that's great. I know it's hard to envision right now with where we're at, a time when we can go back to full in-person instruction, but what are the conditions that would need to be in place for that to be possible? Because I know as we look out towards, the spring and later in the spring terms, people are thinking about and maybe starting to get hopeful that we may get to that point at some point this year.
Well, let's talk about the vaccine and how it's going to be distributed to communities, and we don't quite know the details on that, but it's going to start making its way into different cities and towns by the end of December, mid-December, end of December. And then, as it becomes more widespread, that will help us make a determination of how we can take the next step to getting children back in the classroom full time. So I think we're a little bit away from that. I know we still have a couple tough months ahead of us with the spread. We're just really starting this, or, we're in the middle of the surge, but we've got another, December, January of tough sledding, and we want to get through that. But it's great to look forward positively and think we, look at when we can get back to being full time. It would be great, but it all depends on how quickly we can get that vaccine into the community and bring these numbers down. So it would be, a good circumstance and situation.
That's great. Ellen, from your perspective, I know we had to go through all kinds of gymnastics to be able to have support both a virtual academy environment and a hybrid in-person instruction. How ready are we to switch back to full in-person when it's safe to do so? What things would need to happen from a teaching staffing perspective, perhaps, or scheduling perspective, or anything else we might need to consider to make that possible? And you may say, well, Matt's not here, and that's a Matt question, and that's okay too.
Well, I would think it would be looking at the scheduling to see if we can still, where we would tweak the schedule. Would it be adding back in-person specials on the elementary school level? That might be the beginning. Is it Wednesdays? Wednesdays are tough because kids in the hybrid program are all remote all day, and it's live for a lot of students. That might be where we tweak. So it would all depend. There has been a little talk about this. Miss Sprague, who's brilliant, Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum Instruction, has been thinking about this along with Courtney Young about ways in which we could potentially increase when we could. But the warm weather is going to lend itself to great things. Open up the windows, maybe a little outside interaction for kids. So I do feel very optimistic about when we get into warm weather and how we can do it. So I don't know exactly how the superintendent would start to look at expanding the day, but there are some areas. Wednesdays and specials is my guess.
That makes sense. I think it's a good guess. I don't know if you have this information at a school committee level, but do we have a sense of how many families have moved from in-person to virtual academy or gone the other direction since the beginning of the school year? Or have most people been pretty stable with the decision they made up front?
You know, I think there's definitely been an answer to that at a school committee meeting, but I did not want to bother the superintendent today. He's taking a well-deserved day off. So I don't have those numbers. Yes, I know, it's very exciting. But I know that it's significant, that there is a significant amount of students requesting to go to virtual academy from hybrid. And particularly, I know there's a wait list at the high school. And I know the principal is on top of that, looking at ways in which those requests can be dealt with. But we did try to stick to a time when you could transfer at a natural break in the school year, although I know that the administration was trying to be flexible. But it is a significant number. It's not, so much that it's going to tip the scale, but I know that it is. And I know additionally, they're looking at ways in which the remote part of the programming can be a little bit better. I know they're trying to strategize with teachers about ways in which the instruction can improve for all learners, because I know the school committee and the mayor has been made aware of the fact that there are some kids that are not necessarily accessing a lot of education on the remote side. And so we're looking at ways on the systematic level to address that. So it doesn't really answer your question, but it's just an important piece for the community to know that we are very concerned about those kids.
No, I think it's good. And I do think it's, to answer the spirit of the question, which is trying to get a sense of how much shifting, families were making decisions about. So I think that works well. Look, understandably, the pandemic and how we're responding to it and all the scheduling has dominated our school conversations in the last, what feels like forever, probably only last few months, but it feels like, did we ever talk about anything else related to education ever? But other things are happening in the schools besides responding to the emergency situation that were happening. And I didn't know if there was anything in particular that you wanted to touch on or bring up that was not specifically related to our COVID response.
Well, normally, we would be looking at ways to address our strategic plan. We do have a strategic plan, and it certainly did not include COVID-19, although we've had to revamp it. We would be looking at ways to strengthen in-district special education programs, of course. Always looking at ways to mitigate the financial aspects, but also to create least restrictive environments for all learners. We are looking at ways, of course, this is pandemic stuff, but we are looking at ways to make sure that it's equitable between the virtual learning academy and the hybrid program, because we've never run a virtual learning academy before, and I know that that's a big priority of the superintendent. Middle school programming has always been a goal of the school committee / administration to look at the ways in which we can improve the education experience of middle schoolers. And last year, we started a committee to really look at the middle school programming to make it better. And so that's been a priority for the district for a long time. And we're moving into January soon, which will be budget time, and I'm avoiding eye contact with Scott, but we're looking at ways in which the school district can improve and leverage our funding. And that's when the superintendent meets with all the principals and asks for ways in which, what we need to run the schools and improve the education system. So that's where we are, non-pandemic. And the superintendent is working on his goals. And that's about it, Sam.
Right. Well, I appreciate it. I know that none of this is easy, and we are always putting those students first, but we're not just putting first, like get them in a classroom. We are still thinking about those who are maybe going to college, or they want to learn a particular subject area, or lots of things that are happening in the classrooms, virtually or in the classrooms. And we can't lose sight of how hard all those staff and students are working to learn new stuff. And I don't know that we have any insight into testing this year, but I imagine things like MCAS and SATs and others will be different than it potentially has been, but it's probably too early to know what differences will be. Is that correct? Or do we have any insight?
the PSATs and SATs are College Board, but the MCAS, we are told, are still on. And we will be, running MCAS. And as ugly as it is, that's what we have to do if DESE tells us to. And we'll be doing the best we can with the testing that we have, that we're
Do you
ordered to.
anticipate a virtual version for those students who are not in the classroom at all?
Oh, I'm sure.
I'm sure.
I absolutely believe, we have to remember that MCAS are a graduation requirement in Massachusetts. So they would absolutely have to be accommodations made for virtual academy students. I mean, in my humble opinion.
That was a confident you better. That's how I interpreted that. And I think you have a lot of people supporting you. And I'm, joking aside, I'm sure that the state is looking at the reality of that and, piling a bunch of students into a gym or other places that we, cafeterias or other ways that we have given certain kinds of testing or even just the regular classroom has new challenges for us. So I'm sure those things will be happening. Thank you so much for joining us, Ellen. I really appreciate it. And thank you as always, Scott. I do have one more question for you, Scott, because I forgot to ask you something earlier and I will get lots of messages if I don't bring it up. So I don't want to forget. In the last, I think it was the last trustees meeting, they talked about approving a $10,000 library spend for holiday decorations. And some folks in the community have had a reaction to that. And I won't speak for other people because I don't like to do that. But there has been some concern that while that is a nice thing and celebrating festivities is nice, we have something that's already done in the center by the city already and, festival committee and, could we better use that towards programming or other types of things? And I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I want to raise it and you can defer to next week if you want to, do some background because I didn't ahead of time ask you to look into this. So I don't know if you have the information handy.
I don't, and I will look into it because there's not a line item in the budget for that. So I don't know if they're getting that, or if they plan on using funds from their trust. But 10,000 does seem like a lot of money for decorating. I'm not quite sure what they would do. So I'll look into it and get back to you. That's a good question.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you always doing that for us. Thank you all for joining us. And for those of you who are watching, thank you again. We have some wonderful ways to celebrate the festivities. We will hopefully have a menorah to join the nativity scene and all the other decorations and trees and lights that are in the center. So you can walk by and enjoy that and get a little bit of outside time. Even though we can't have the big festival, we can still enjoy that. We've got some wonderful fundraising by the Boy Scouts and some ways to help support their outdoor adventures and the things that they do, and also to brighten up our homes and such. I'm seeing lots of lights go on to homes around the neighborhoods, and it's fun to see that go up a little bit early. And as always, thank you for the information. As Scott described, we do need to be careful. We've got rising numbers that are independent of the Saturday testing. So we don't want the community to think the testing is finding things. We were rising anyways, and we'll continue to do that if we don't continue to protect each other. So hopefully the testing is a great opportunity to actually stop spread for people who were not symptomatic and didn't know that they might be passing along to others more vulnerable. So thank you all as always, and continue to take good care of each other.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Thanks. Bye.
Happy Thanksgiving. Bye.